CS120 Lab 5, Creating and Editing Workbooks in Microsoft Excel. Starting with Pause and Practice Activity 1, we're going to open a document from Microsoft Excel in our Chapter 1 student files, which will be the Paradise Lakes file. And as soon as we have it open, we'll go ahead and click Enable Editing if it pops up on your window. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to save this as a new document. And I'll go ahead and I'll put my information behind here. So this is Pause and Practice. Excuse me, I'll put my initials first. And then Pause and Practice E1-1 and then save. Go ahead and start this activity by entering some information into the worksheet. So here we'll select cell A1, row A, column A, row 1. And in here we're going to type Paradise Hills Resort. You can press the Enter key and you will move down to the cell below it, but you also could have pressed the Tab key and it'll move to the right one cell. Just depends upon your preference. We're then going to move to cell A10, which is here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to type total, and we'll press the Enter key. And then we're going to enter some cell information in cells G and H. So I'll go ahead and I'll type this information in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press the Enter key so I move straight down. And keep entering the information. And then I'm going to move the cursor up to the next cell. We're next going to use a fill handle, and this allows us to put information into multiple cells automatically. So we're going to go ahead and select cell B4 here. And down in the lower right corner is a little black box. If I hover the mouse over it, it'll turn into a plus, indicating that we're going to add information through a fill action. Now when I pull this to the right, you'll notice below it has this little word. It says Friday, or if I move back, Thursday and Wednesday. Excel is smart enough to understand that this may be what we want to enter into these cells. So I'll drag it all the way to H4 and then I'll let go of the mouse button. So that's entered that information automatically for us. We're next going to do some editing in some cells that already have information in them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click in cell A4. I have the cell selected at this moment, but I can't edit it unless I come up here to the formula bar. So instead I'm just going to double click on this cell, and this will place a cursor within that cell indicating that we can edit it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to delete an I in categories. We're doing this to create some spelling errors that we'll fix a little later in another Pause and Practice activity. And then I'm going to go to Apparel and I'm going to do the same thing. And here we'll go ahead and we will delete. And we want to delete the P, it says in this one. We'll next complete some formatting changes to our document. It asks us to select cells A5 through A9. So to do this, I'm going to click on cell A5, and then I'm going to hold the mouse pointer down and I'm going to drag. This allows me to select multiple cells at a time. So I'll go ahead and I'll let go of the mouse cursor, and then I'm going to go to the Increase tab, the Increase Indent button on the on the ribbon, and it happens to be in the alignment group, and it's the Increase Indent. So when I do that, it pushes it in a little bit so that it stands out away from the categories title. We're also going to do B4 through H4. So this will be all of these cells. And I'm going to go up to the alignment group again and click on the centering option to center that information. One thing I realized I missed earlier in this was we were meant to delete this information here in cell B10. So I'll select that cell and I'll press the delete key to remove that. Next, we're going to be doing some cutting and pasting activities. So we're going to select B4 through B9. And then I'm going to do the cut option. I can do this either by coming up to the clipboard group and pressing cut, which I'll do here. Cut works a little bit differently than you've seen in Word. Instead of deleting it automatically and putting it into the clipboard, it places this little marquee around it to indicate that you have selected it for a cut action or possibly a copy action. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to paste this over starting in cell I4. So I'll come up here and I'll press the paste button. So you'll notice it cut the data from here and it pasted it over here. So we're going to do a slightly different option here. We're going to select cells C4 through I9. And then we're going to move our cursor down until it turns into a 4-pointed arrow. I'll click the mouse button and then that'll allow me to drag and move this rather than cutting and pasting. So I'll go ahead and I'll let go of that and you'll notice it moved this one column to the right. Go ahead and I'll click back up here in cell A1. And then I'll save this. So this completes pause and practice activity 1. We'll move on to pause and practice activity 2. I've already saved this file under the new name. We're going to be working with formulas at this point. So we're going to go ahead and I am going to calculate some totals here. So I could take this with a calculator and count each one of these up and place the total here. But we don't want to do that because Excel is a fairly powerful calculator for us. One thing to keep in mind is Excel, each one of these cells here, acts as a holder for information. I like to think of these as variables in math. For instance, in math you have x plus y equals z. In this case, instead of an x, we would use the variable name B10 for this cell. So in this case, we're going to have B5 plus B6 plus B7 plus B8 plus B9. I could place that information in this cell, that formula, equals B5 plus B6 plus B7 plus B8 plus B9 plus B10. It's a lot of typing, and looks like I made an error in my calculations. I added B10 in there when I shouldn't have. And that'll give us a total here. We'll erase that, and instead we're going to use an automatic feature of Excel called AutoSum. So I'm going to come up here under the editing group, click the AutoSum button. Excel will look around this cell and find data. It will always look ahead, above first, below, to the left, and then to the right, and say, I think this is the data you want to sum. In this case, it's correct, so I'll press the Enter key. And you should notice this value was the same as when I typed in the earlier formula. We're next going to take this formula and I'm going to copy it to each of these cells. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull with the fill handle over to the right, and this will automatically enter the information for us in those cells as well. I want to pause for a moment here and talk about the formulas. So if I click into cell B10, you notice we have equals sum. Sum is the name of a special formula that takes the information within the brackets and does an operation on this. In case this operation is to add all of the cells B5 through B9 together and then place that value that it comes up with in this cell. Now when we did the drag operation, you should notice that it changed from B5 through B9 to C5 through C9. That is to ensure that we have the correct information for our sum operation. This is an important part of Excel. It's able to think ahead for you and determine what information you are properly looking for. So let's continue, and we're going to go ahead and do the sums for each of our row values here. So we're going to go ahead and click in cell J5, and then we're going to do an auto sum similar to what we did before, except this time we're going to double click it. This will automatically select the range and enter it into our cell. Now here we have just a little bit more range than we need to. If you look up here in the formula bar, you'll see that the range starts in B5 but comes all the way over to I5. So we're going to adjust this by going to the formula bar, and we're going to take out the I and put an H instead. And you'll notice this opens up this automatic formula option for us. We don't want any of this information, so I'm just going to press the Enter key. I'll come back to the cell, and you notice that changed to B5 through H5, the range that we wanted. We'll then copy this down through J9. Actually, we wanted to come one more down so that we could do the full total here. We're then going to take this and move this over to I5 through I10. So I'll drag it and place it in place. I'll next select I4 and type total here to finish off our information. We're going to go ahead and we're going to change the style of these cells. So I'm going to select cell A1, and I'm going to click on the Style Cell options. This is in the Home tab under the More option in the Styles group. So I'll click the More button here, and for this cell we're going to choose the title cell style. We're then going to go to cell A2, and we'll do this again. We'll go ahead and click on the More option here, and we'll do the Heading 2 option. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to cell A10 through I10. Highlight that, and we'll use the Total option here to the right. And then we're going to do A4 through A10. Excuse me. I've picked the wrong range. Instead, we want to go through A4 through A10. I'm going to hold the Control key down, and this will let us select another range. And I'll select the information above the data. We're then going to go and we're going to change this to a light blue accent 1. And that will be this one right there. So I select that. And then we'll go ahead and click on cell F1 just to deselect the area that we've already selected. We'll next apply a theme to our worksheet. So we're going to go to the Page Layout tab, And over here on the right are the options for themes. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on themes. And we're going to scroll down here until we find the faucet option. Where is it in my list? It doesn't look. There we go. It's right at the beginning. So I'll click that. We'll next do some font changes here. So I'm going to go back to the Home tab. And we'll start in cell A4. And we're going to go up to the font group here. Select the font option. And we're going to select the Condera font. I'm scrolling my mouse wheel while I'm in here. So there's the Condera font. I'll change the font size to 16. So I'll click here, choose 16. I'll choose the bold option. I'm going to now select cells A5 through I10. And here we're going to change the font to size 12. Make it a little larger. We'll use the Format Painter next, so I'll select in A5, click the Format Painter once, and then I'll click and hold down on B4 and drag my mouse pointer to the right, and then release it when I get to A10. We'll be next applying some formatting to our numbers, and we'll doing some alignment options as well. So I'm going to select B5 through I9. I'm going to click the comma style button, and that's up here under the numbers group. You'll notice that this placed the comma at the thousands place for us and added some trailing zeros to this to give this more of a currency look. So we'll next go ahead and keep this selected. We're going to click the decrease decimal button. That is to the right of the comma. So I'll click that twice to remove our decimal points. We'll next select B10 through I10, our totals row here. Go ahead and click the decrease decimal in here as well, even though that did nothing for us. I'm going to click the Align Right option here. Realized I skipped a step here. We actually want to come up here to B4 through I4. And we're going to click the Align Right button here under the Align group, and this will push the text to the right side of the cell. Now, you'll notice here that some of these cells do not show all the information, and we'll fix this at a little point later. Then we're going to go to cell A10, which is here, and apply a bold option to it as well. And finally, for this pause and practice, we'll add some borders. So we're going to select A4 through I10. And then we're going to click the border button, and that is in the font group here. This is the borders button. Go ahead and click the drop down arrow here, and we're going to do the border format for all borders here. So what this will do is it places a border around each of these. The reason we do this rather than just sticking with the cell borders is because the cell borders from default will not print when you print this. So this is typically why you want to add borders to the cells yourself. Okay. go ahead and select cells A10 through I10. And we're going to press the Control 1 button, just a different option, to open the Formatting Cells pop-out window. We'll click the Border tab here, just a little different way of working with the borders. We'll click the bottom border icon. So in this case, we'll click here in the preview. I'll click this bottom border here. This removes the border from the bottom edge of this selection. I'll click the OK button. And you'll notice here when I deselect that no longer is that border applied. Now select A2 through I2. So A2 to I2. Click the Borders tab. Once again in our dialog box, so we'll come up here to the font group, and we'll go to Borders, and we're going to click the bottom border here, and we're going to remove the bottom border as we did again. Now I'm going to click the color option, and let's just choose a dark green. I'm not worried if it's the same green as we had before, as shown in the book. And we'll go ahead and we'll click the bottom border again now to apply this. I'll click OK, deselect, and you'll notice that a border has been placed below this selected area. Okay, that completes this pause and practice activity. Moving on to pause and practice activity 3, we're going to start off by changing the width of our columns. So I'm going to hover over cell B4, and then I'm going to click, hold down the mouse button, and then drag to the right. I'm going to next go to the Format button. This is in the Cells group. So I'll click the Format button here. And then I'm going to change the column width, so I'll click that option to 14, press the Enter key, and that will change the width of these to 14. I'm going to undo this for a moment because I want to show you something that can be useful in the future. So I'm going to once again select this area, and instead of changing this through the Format option, I'm just going to hover my mouse over one of the column separators, and then I'm going to double click. And what this does is it will automatically change the column width to the size of the width of the longest information within the cell. So I'm just going to undo this. It didn't undo too far, so I'll click Redo. Go back and select Format, Width 14. We're now going to work with the row height. So I'm going to click row 4 heading here. And then I am going to go down to the bottom here, click the Control key so I can choose both of those rows simultaneously without choosing the intermediate cells. I'm going to go ahead and go back up to our Format option, go to Column Width. Excuse me, let's undo that, not column here. We're going to go to Row Height, and then we're going to choose this as 24. So it changes that slightly for us. We'll next insert a row into our table. So let me select to deselect the areas. So I'm going to select here on Apparel, or hover over Apparel, press the right mouse button, and then I'm going to do an insert, and this will insert a row in between Equipment Rentals and Apparel. So you'll notice that it placed it above the cell that or the row that I had selected. So we're going to add a new category here. We'll call this food and beverage. Press the Enter key. Hide a row, so take the row we just inserted. We'll go to the Format option under Cells, and then we're going to choose Hide. And I closed it here. So it's Hide and Unhide. So I hover over that and then choose Hide Rows. Slightly easier way to do this would have been to hover over the row, right click, and hide. You will notice that we have row 8 and 10, but there's this little tiny area here, and that shows you that there is a hidden cell. Next, do some centering of information across a range. So we're going to do A1 here through through I1. So we're going to center this information in the middle of this range. So we're going to come up to the alignment group. We're going to choose this merge and center option. Actually, I am incorrect. Instead of that, we're going to click. And we're going to select merge and center. This is a slightly different way than discussed in the book. It's just a little easier. So we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and rename this worksheet. If I come down to the tab here, I'm going to double click on this, and I am going to change this to Cass Lake. This makes it easier to understand what your sheets are indicating. And we can also change the color. So I'm going to double click, instead of double click, I'm going to right click on it. Go to tab color. It says green, so let's just make it a light green here. I won't be able to see that color until I actually create a new worksheet, which we're going to be hopefully doing here in a moment. So I'm going to right click once again on that tab. I'm going to choose the Move or Copy option. If we just click OK here, it moves the sheet. Instead, we have to do Create a Copy. I want to put this at the end of our selection of seats and click OK. Now that we've selected the new tab, you'll notice that the other one does have that light green color. We'll double click on this to change the name of this. We're going to name this Breezy Point. I'll press the Enter key to accept the name. We'll change the color on this tab as well. And this is meant to be an orangey kind of color, so I'll just choose the top orange option here. We're next going to select some more cells, do some more formatting. So we'll do B5 here through H10. Select those. And I'll press the Delete key. Then I'm going to press the Control Home button. And this will move our cursor back up to cell A1. Now you notice that it selected this entire range here. That's because when we did this centering operation, it kept cell A1 in the worksheet, but cells B1 through I1 have in essence disappeared. They are no longer a part of the worksheet, and that's because we centered across the range. Okay, that completes this pause and practice activity. Okay, we're on our final pause and practice activity for this section. So we'll go ahead and we'll start here. We're going to unhide the row we hid earlier. In order to do that, I can't really click on that cell. So what I have to do is click on the surrounding cells. I'm going to then right-click on that selection, come down to unhide. So that'll bring back that row for us. And we're next going to enter some information into these cells. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now I'm entering these with the numpad and then pressing the Enter key to move into each successive cell. And unfortunately, I did that wrong, so let me undo what I just did. I should have instead entered the data and pressed the Tab key to move to the right. This is what I get for not watching what I'm up to. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to hide the worksheet. Same option here. I can hover over the Worksheet tab, right-click, and choose Hide from the menu. Now you'll notice in this case it doesn't show us that we have a hidden tab. So this makes it a little more difficult to unhide, but I'm not going to go through that at this point. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do some spell checking and do some column width work. So I'm going to go up to the cell A1. Now I could have pressed Control Home to do that as well. So I'm going to now go to the Review tab. And then I'm going to go to the proofing group over here, and I'm going to click the spelling button. So the first thing it does is it comes down and highlights this cell because we've got categories spelled wrong. It gives us a suggestion. So I'm going to go ahead and click Change here. It does the same thing for apparel, so I'll click Change there. And it is done with the spell check. So we can move on. So we're going to go to the border between columns A and B. So I'm going to hover over that. And I am going to drag the pointer to the right. And you'll notice that it has a width option above it. So I'm just going to change that to 25 point something, if my mouse will work. And then we'll go back to cell A1. We'll now move on to doing some document properties just like we did for our Word document. So I'll go back to the File tab. We'll click the Show All Properties option. Need to go to the Info tab in order to find that link. So I'll click on that. We'll go up to the title here, and I'm just going to put PPXL 1-4. We'll go to the status down here and we'll type draft. And then we're going to go to the subject area and we'll type weekly revenue. And then I'll go ahead and I'll close that up. And we'll move on. We're going to change some page setup options. So we'll return to the worksheet by clicking the back arrow up here. So we'll go to the Page Layout tab next. So we need to change the orientation of this sheet. Typically it's going to be oriented in a portrait mode, which is longer top to bottom, but we want to change this to oriented in the landscape mode, which is longer right to left. So I'll go ahead and I'll go to orientation and I'll choose landscape. You won't see any change here except for this little light dotted line that comes down the sheet. This is telling you that this information here is too wide to print on one sheet. This sheet will print to here, and then a second sheet will print with this information. Now that is a problem, so we'll fix that next. So we'll go up here to the Dialog Launcher button, And we're going to come down here to the scaling area, and we'll click the Fit To. So this will ensure that this fits on one page. It may change the size of the font in order to do that. So we'll go ahead and click on Margins. And I'm going to horizontally center this so it'll move the information here to center it. It just makes it a little better looking when we print this. We're going to go ahead and do a header and footer on this as well, similar to Word. And so in here, we'll go ahead and click on Header here. And we'll choose Paradise Lakes here as our header for this. We'll do the footer similarly, but we'll choose Cass Lakes as our footer. You notice that it shows us a preview of this, and it's going to center it in the center of the footer and the header. So I'll click OK here. Next, we're going to go to a print preview. So I'll go back to the File tab here. Go to Print. So now it shows us a look of what the page is going to look like when it's printed. Now, I'm actually going to go back here just to show you. If I were to change the orientation back to portrait, and I were going to go to the page setup and just click Adjust To. Actually, that is not what I wanted to do. So I'm going to go here. We're just going to make this 100% because I want you to see what will happen when this prints without being centered. You notice here that it cut this off, and I'd have to go to the next sheet to do this. So you need to be really careful when you're printing Excel documents. It just doesn't work as well as it does in Word. Okay, that ends the pause and practice activities.